Have you ever heard the phrase, "One moment can change everything"? What begins as a light-hearted evening of fun and TikTok challenges takes a sudden dark turn, one that no one in that room will ever forget. This is the shocking, real-life story of how a viral TikTok challenge video ends in tragedy as woman shoots her friend at a party. And it happened right here in the United States. How far would you go to create the perfect viral moment? For one group of friends, their obsession with likes, views, and followers spiraled into a nightmare. Let me ask you this. Have you ever made a decision in the heat of the moment that you instantly regretted? Now imagine that decision costing someone their life, a life full of dreams, love, and potential. That's exactly what happened on this fateful night. What should have been a carefree celebration ended with heartbreak, one young woman lying lifeless and another on the path to prison. Before we jump into this incredible story, take a moment to comment below where you're tuning in from, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this, stories that will captivate you, shock you, and most importantly, stay with you long after you've watched. Your support helps us share these powerful messages with the world. Now, back to our story. Claire Mathis, a bright, energetic 20-year-old college student, and her best friend, Serena Lopez, were inseparable. Serena, an aspiring TikTok influencer, loved the spotlight. She lived for the thrill of creating videos that would get people talking, but this time her need for attention crossed a line. A dangerous, irreversible line. At that party, the energy was high. Music blasted from the speakers, people laughed, and phones were out, capturing every moment. But then someone had an idea. A TikTok challenge using a gun. What could go wrong, right? A loaded gun, a camera rolling, and friends who thought they were untouchable. This wasn't just a party. This was the start of something devastating. What happened next would leave a family shattered, a friendship destroyed, and a community shaken to its core. So, what led to this tragedy? How did a night of fun turn into a nightmare? Stick with me as we unravel the chilling details of a story that will make you think twice about chasing online fame, because sometimes the cost is simply too high. Let me introduce you to the people at the heart of this tragedy. These aren't just names in a story. They're real people with dreams, personalities, and lives that were forever changed in just one terrible moment. First, there's Claire Mathis. Claire was only 20 years old, but she was already chasing big dreams. She was a journalism student at Tulane University and had a passion for telling stories. Claire wanted to make a difference in the world, to uncover the truth, and to give a voice to those who couldn't speak for themselves. She had a bright smile, the kind of smile that lit up a room, and a laugh that made everyone feel warm and happy. Her family would tell you that Claire was the type of person who saw the good in everyone. She was caring, kind, and full of life. And then there's Serena Lopez. Serena wasn't just Claire's best friend. She was more like a sister. They had been inseparable since high school, doing everything together. But Serena was different from Claire in one big way. While Claire dreamed of reporting the news, Serena wanted to be the news. Serena was obsessed with TikTok. She loved making videos, dancing, and doing silly challenges to rack up views. Every like and comment felt like a little victory to her, but sometimes her need for attention made her take risks. Big risks. Next we have Derek Evans. Derek was the host of the party that night. He was known for throwing wild get-togethers at his sleek apartment in the French Quarter. Derek loved being the life of the party, and his place was where everyone wanted to be. It wasn't unusual for his gatherings to go late into the night, filled with music, laughter, and plenty of chaos. But Derek had a secret. A gun he kept in his room. It wasn't locked away, and it wasn't safe. That gun would become the centerpiece of this tragic story. Finally, there's someone we'll call Jamaican. His real name isn't important, but his role in the story is. Jamaican wasn't a close friend of Claire or Serena, but he was there that night. He becomes a key figure in Serena's version of what happened, and as you'll see, his involvement raises more questions than answers. These four people crossed paths on that fateful night, and their choices set the stage for a tragedy no one could stop. Each of them had their own reasons for being at that party, their own stories to tell, but together their lives became part of a story no one will ever forget. So now that you know the players in this heartbreaking tale, let's dive deeper. How did one night of fun turn into a nightmare? How did these friends go from laughing and filming videos to facing the weight of loss, guilt, and regret? Stick with me, because this story is just getting started. It was a warm summer evening in July 2023, and the streets of New Orleans' French Quarter were alive with music and excitement. The sounds of jazz spilled from the bars, the scent of Cajun food filled the air, and people laughed as they walked under the glow of string lights. It was the kind of night where everything felt perfect, full of life and possibility. But behind the walls of an upscale apartment, something was happening that no one could have imagined would end so badly. Inside Derek Evans' apartment, the party was just getting started. The music was loud, the laughter even louder, and everyone seemed to be having a great time. Serena Lopez, always the life of the party, had planned this small gathering. She wanted it to be more than just another hangout. Serena had one goal in mind: to create TikTok videos that would blow up and go viral. She wanted views, likes, and followers. Despite his age, she wanted to be noticed. Claire Mathis, her best friend, was right by her side, smiling and having fun. Claire wasn't as into social media as Serena, but she loved seeing her friend happy. They were surrounded by a few others, all laughing, dancing, and snapping pictures. Derek, the host, seemed to enjoy being the guy with the cool apartment where everyone wanted to be. Then, as the night went on, Serena's eyes caught something. A revolver. It was sitting on a shelf in Derek's room, and it wasn't locked away. Serena's face lit up with an idea. "Let's use this," she said, holding the gun up like it was a shiny new toy. She thought it would be the perfect prop for their next TikTok challenge. "Come on, it'll look so cool," she told the group, her excitement bubbling over. "We can make it look like we're in an action movie or something." At first, some of the guests hesitated. A real gun? That sounded risky. But Serena brushed off their concerns, laughing and saying, "It's not like we're actually going to shoot it, it's just for the video." She waved the gun around as if it was completely harmless. One by one, the guests started joining in. They posed with the gun, striking dramatic action poses and laughing as they filmed themselves. Some held it like they were spies in a movie, pointing it at imaginary villains. Others pretended to be cowboys, spinning it around before pretending to take a dramatic shot. The room was full of laughter, cheers, and the constant hum of TikTok videos being filmed. Claire watched her friends as they goofed around, smiling but unsure. She wasn't used to this kind of thing, but she trusted Serena. When Serena handed her the revolver and said, "Your turn, Claire. This will be the best one yet," Claire hesitated for just a moment. But then she smiled, took the gun, and said, "Okay, but only if you promise not to make me look silly." The group laughed as they filmed, not realizing that every second they played with that gun brought them closer to disaster. They were too busy laughing, too busy trying to make the perfect video, to think about what they were doing. The revolver wasn't a toy. It wasn't a harmless prop. It was loaded, sitting quietly in their hands, waiting for someone to make a mistake. And when that mistake finally happened, it was already too late. That's how it all began. A warm summer night, a group of friends, and one bad decision that changed everything. Stay with me, because what happens next will leave you speechless. The party had reached its peak. Everyone was laughing, shouting, and hyping each other up as they filmed one TikTok after another. Phones were out, capturing every dramatic pose, every fake action scene, and every exaggerated laugh. The revolver had somehow become the star of the show, passed from one person to another like it was nothing more than a harmless prop. Then it was Serena's turn again. She held the gun confidently, posing for the camera, acting like a movie star. She spun around, pointed the gun at the ceiling, and flashed a playful grin. She was in her element, soaking in the attention. The group cheered her on, and Serena, in her excitement, turned toward Claire. "Okay, Claire, now it's your turn," Serena said, laughing as she extended the revolver toward her best friend. Claire hesitated for a moment, her smile faltering. "I don't know, Serena," she said quietly. "Are you sure this is safe?" Serena waved her off, rolling her eyes. "Oh, come on, it's just for fun, it's not loaded or anything." She laughed again, but Claire still looked unsure. What happened next feels like something out of a nightmare. As Serena moved to hand the revolver to Claire, her grip shifted slightly. She fumbled with the gun for just a split second, her hand brushing against the trigger. And then it happened. A deafening bang shattered the laughter, cutting through the noise like a knife. Everyone froze. For a moment, no one moved, no one breathed. It was as if time itself had stopped. Then their eyes fell on Claire. She was clutching her chest, her expression filled with shock and pain. Slowly, her knees buckled, and she collapsed onto the floor. "Claire!" Serena screamed, dropping the gun and rushing to her friend's side. The others stared in horror, their faces pale as they tried to process what had just happened. The room, which had been filled with so much noise and energy just seconds before, was now eerily silent except for Serena's panicked cries. It didn't take long for someone to notice the blood. A dark red stain was spreading across Claire's shirt, right where the bullet had struck her. "Oh my God," one of the guests whispered, their voice trembling. "She's been shot." That's when the panic set in. People started shouting over each other, their voices filled with fear and confusion. "What do we do?" someone yelled. "Call an ambulance," another cried. But instead of calling 911, Serena and Derek made a split-second decision. "We need to get her to the hospital now," Serena shouted, tears streaming down her face. She and Derek grabbed Claire's limp body and carried her to Derek's car. The others stood frozen, unsure of what to do, as the car sped away into the night. It was only as the car pulled out of the driveway that the horrifying truth sank in for everyone who was still there. The gun had been loaded the entire time. Not one of them had thought to check it, not the laughter, the jokes, the silly poses, all of it had vanished, replaced by the terrifying realization of what they had done. Claire Mathis, the girl with big dreams and a bright smile, was now fighting for her life because of a reckless mistake. And as the group stood in the silence of that apartment, staring at the bloodstains left on the floor, one question lingered in the air. How did it come to this? But the night wasn't over yet. What would happen at the hospital? Would Claire survive? And what would become of the people who let this happen? Stick with me, because the story only gets more devastating from here. Serena and Derek were in full panic mode as they sped through the streets of New Orleans. Claire was in the back seat, barely conscious. Her breathing was shallow, and her blood had soaked through her shirt. Serena kept turning around, shouting, "Hold on, Claire, just hold on!" But deep down, she was terrified. What if they were too late? Derek's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. He was driving as fast as he could, running red lights and weaving through traffic. The car felt like it was moving in slow motion, even though they were speeding. All the while, Serena's mind was racing. She kept replaying what had just happened, but she couldn't make sense of it. How could everything have gone so wrong? When they finally pulled up to New Orleans Memorial Hospital, Derek slammed on the brakes. The car screeched to a stop right in front of the emergency entrance. Serena and Derek jumped out, shouting for help. "We need a doctor! She's been shot!" Serena screamed, tears streaming down her face. Doctors and nurses rushed out with a stretcher, carefully lifting Claire's limp body and wheeling her inside. Serena and Derek followed behind, but they were stopped at the doors. "You can't come in here," a nurse said firmly. "We need to work on her." As the doors swung shut, Serena and Derek stood there, their hearts pounding. It was the first quiet moment they'd had since the gun went off, but that quiet didn't last long. A hospital security guard approached them, his eyes narrowing as he looked them over. "What happened?" he asked. Serena and Derek exchanged nervous glances. They hadn't thought about what they were going to say. We found her," Serena stammered. "She was outside the apartment. She was hurt, and we brought her here." Derek nodded quickly, trying to back up her story. "Yeah, we didn't know her or anything. She was just there." The security guard frowned. Something didn't feel right, but he didn't press them further. Instead, he stepped inside to notify the police. When the officers arrived, they began asking questions, and right away Serena and Derek's story started to fall apart. The police couldn't understand how Claire could have been found outside when she had no shoes, no phone, and no ID. How did she end up on the street? And why hadn't anyone called 911? The situation became even more suspicious when hospital staff discovered that the bullet wound was fresh, too fresh for her to have been wandering around outside. The officers asked Serena and Derek to wait in a side room, and though neither of them said it, both knew they were in trouble. Meanwhile, back at the apartment, things were unraveling. Witnesses who had been at the party were starting to tell their side of the story. Some admitted that there had been drinking and joking around with the gun. Others mentioned that Serena had been filming TikTok videos with the revolver right before the shot went off. It didn't take long for the police to get access to the apartment's security footage. Cameras in the hallway captured the sound of the gunshot and showed Serena and Derek frantically carrying Claire out of the building. The footage directly contradicted their story. Claire wasn't found outside. She had been shot inside the apartment. By the time the police came back to question Serena and Derek, they already knew the truth. The evidence was piling up and their lies couldn't hold up any longer. The officers asked them to come down to the station for further questioning, and both reluctantly agreed. It was only a matter of time before the full story came out. The events of that night, the decisions they made, and the secrets they tried to keep were all about to be exposed. But the damage was already done. Claire was fighting for her life, and the clock was ticking. What would happen next? Would the truth bring justice, or would the lies keep piling up? This story is far from over, so stay with me as we uncover the fallout of this tragic night. The days after Claire's death were heavy with questions, sorrow, and anger. As investigators started digging into what had happened that night, Serena's story became harder and harder to believe. At first, she stuck to her claim that Claire had been found hurt outside the apartment. But the more she talked, the more her details began to fall apart. Her words didn't match up with the evidence, and investigators knew there was more to the story. But it wasn't just Serena's words that raised suspicions, it was her actions too. Investigators turned to social media, and what they found shocked them. Videos from the party began to surface online, showing Serena and the other guests laughing, dancing, and, most troubling of all, handling the revolver. One clip showed Serena posing with the gun, pointing it dramatically toward the camera as if she were in a movie. These videos quickly became a key piece of evidence. They painted a picture of what really happened that night, showing just how reckless and careless the group had been. But it wasn't just the videos from that night that caused outrage. It was what Serena did afterward. Even after Claire's death, Serena kept posting TikToks. She acted as though nothing had happened, sharing new videos of herself dancing and laughing with friends. In some of these posts, there were more guns, more props for her content. The comments on her videos were flooded with anger. People demanded to know how she could act so carefree after losing her best friend. "Do you even care about what happened to Claire?" one person wrote. "How can you post this? Have you no shame?" said another. The outrage wasn't just online. It spilled into the streets, with protests outside Serena's family home. People held signs that read, "Justice for Claire," and "Guns are not toys." The community was heartbroken, and they wanted Serena to answer for what had happened. Meanwhile, Claire's family was left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. Her parents, who had once dreamed of seeing Claire graduate college and follow her dreams, were now planning a memorial service instead. It was a beautiful, tear-filled ceremony where family and friends shared stories about Claire's kindness, her humor, and her bright future that had been stolen too soon. Her mother spoke to the crowd, her voice trembling but strong. "Claire was our sunshine. She believed in the goodness of people, but she was taken from us because of someone's recklessness. We won't let this go unanswered. We will fight for justice." Her words struck a chord. People in the crowd nodded, some wiping away tears. Claire's family wanted answers, but more than that, they wanted change. They wanted people to understand that this wasn't just an accident. It was a preventable tragedy, one that never should have happened. As investigators built their case, the pressure on Serena grew. Every lie she told, every TikTok she posted, and every moment of her carelessness became part of the evidence against her. The truth was coming out, and there was no way to hide from it anymore. The aftermath of that one reckless night spread far beyond that apartment. It reached into the hearts of everyone who knew Claire, everyone who saw the videos, and everyone who wondered how it all could have been avoided. What happens next will determine if justice is truly served. Stay with me as we take a closer look at how this case unfolds in court and the consequences that followed. Because this story isn't just about one night. It's about what happens when carelessness and tragedy collide. The courtroom was silent as Serena Lopez walked in, her head down, avoiding the stares of the people gathered inside. It was October 2023, months after the tragic night that took Claire Mathis's life. The air in the room was heavy, filled with sadness, anger, and an overwhelming need for answers. Serena, who had once been known for her bright smile and bubbly TikTok videos, now looked like a shadow of her former self. That she was there to face the charges that would hold her accountable for what happened to Claire. The prosecutors didn't hold back. They told the jury about Serena's carelessness, her decision to use a loaded gun as a prop, and her obsession with social media fame. They painted a picture of a young woman so focused on getting likes and views that she didn't stop to think about the consequences. She didn't check the gun, the prosecutor said, his voice steady but firm. She didn't make sure it was safe, and because of that her best friend is gone. This wasn't just an accident, it was negligence, and Claire paid the price. The jury listened closely as they played the TikTok videos from that night. One by one, the clips showed Serena and the others laughing, posing, and passing the gun around as if it were a harmless toy. The prosecutor paused the video and looked directly at the jury. This wasn't just one bad decision, it was a series of reckless choices that led to a tragedy. Serena's defense team tried to argue that it was all just a terrible accident. They said Serena never meant to harm Claire and that she was devastated by what had happened. Her lawyer described her as a young woman who made a mistake and didn't understand the gravity of her actions. She didn't wake up that morning thinking this would happen, the defense lawyer said. She loved Claire. She would never hurt her on purpose. But the most emotional moments came when Claire's family took the stand. Her mother was the first to speak. She held a tissue in her hand, her voice trembling as she talked about her daughter. "Claire was my sunshine," she said, tears streaming down her face. "She had so many dreams. She wanted to be a journalist, to make a difference in the world. But now, we'll never get to see her graduate, get married, or live the life she deserved. All because of a careless, reckless act." The room was silent except for the sound of quiet sobbing from the gallery. Claire's father spoke next. He talked about how proud he was of his daughter and how much he missed her laugh. "There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about her," he said. "I just hope this trial brings some justice for Claire." The testimonies were heartbreaking. They painted a picture of who Claire was, a bright, caring young woman with so much to give. The jury could see the pain in her family's eyes, and it was impossible not to feel their grief. For months the case dragged on, witnesses were called, evidence was presented, and both sides fought hard to make their case. The community watched closely, waiting to see what would happen. Serena's every move was scrutinized, and the weight of what she had done was clear on her face every time she entered the courtroom. Finally, in March 2024, Serena made a decision. She pled guilty to the charge of involuntary manslaughter. The courtroom was silent as the judge read the verdict. Serena would serve time for what she had done, but no amount of punishment could bring Claire back. As the gavel came down, signaling the end of the trial, there was a sense of closure, but also a deep sadness. Serena's actions had taken a life, and now her own future was forever changed. The trial had answered some questions, but the pain of that night would linger for everyone involved. Stay with me because we're not done yet. There's still more to this story, and what happens next is just as important as what came before. In the end, justice was served, but the pain of what happened could never truly be undone. Serena Lopez was sentenced to 10 years, 5 years behind bars, and 5 years of probation. She was given 154 days credit for the time she had already spent in jail. As the sentence was read, Serena stood silently, her head bowed. She didn't say a word, but her face showed the weight of the punishment and the burden she would carry for the rest of her life. The judge didn't hold back in his final remarks. His voice was firm but filled with disappointment. "Claire Mathis lost her life because of your reckless behavior," he said, looking directly at Serena. "This was a preventable tragedy. You had every opportunity to make a better choice, but you didn't. And now a bright, promising young woman is gone forever. This isn't just about punishment. It's about making sure no one else has to go through what Claire's family has endured. The courtroom was filled with silence as those words sank in. The judge's message wasn't just for Serena, it was for everyone who watched the case unfold. Claire's death was a heartbreaking reminder of the dangers of mishandling firearms and the risks that come with chasing viral fame on social media. Outside the courthouse, Claire's family stood together, holding hands as they faced the cameras. Her mother spoke first, her voice steady but emotional. "This isn't just about our daughter," she said. "This is about making sure no one else has to bury their child because of a careless mistake. Guns are not toys. Social media is not worth a life. If anything good can come from this, it's that we can help prevent this from happening to someone else." Claire's father added, "We'll never stop missing her, but we'll honor her memory by raising awareness about gun safety. We want people to think before they act, to remember that one split-second decision can change everything." The case became a powerful cautionary tale. It was a wake-up call for those who treat guns as harmless props, and a stark warning about the dark side of social media culture. The drive for likes and followers had cost Claire her life and left a family forever grieving. Even as Serena began her sentence, the lessons of this tragedy lingered. Claire's story was shared far and wide, sparking conversations about responsibility, safety, and the true cost of a moment's carelessness. This isn't just a story about loss, it's a story about the choices we make and the consequences that follow. Claire Mathis had dreams, a family who loved her, and a future that was stolen in an instant. Let her story be a reminder to all of us to value life, to think before we act, and to never take safety for granted. If this story shocked you, it's because it shows how easily lives can be shattered by a single, reckless decision. Guns are not toys, and social media stunts are not worth risking lives. If you enjoyed this deep dive into a heartbreaking case, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories every week. Let's keep these conversations alive to ensure such tragedies never happen again. Thank you for staying with me through this heartbreaking tale. If this story moved you, I encourage you to share it with others. Let's keep Claire's memory alive by spreading the message of caution and care. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below with your thoughts. Together we can continue to learn, reflect, and honor those whose stories deserve to be told. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.